What does $73,428 of shame feel like? It's not a number on a screen. It's a physical weight. It sits in your chest when you wake up in the morning. It's the metallic taste of panic when you're buying groceries, praying your card doesn't get declined. It's the knot in your stomach when a friend suggests a weekend trip you know you can't afford, so you make up an excuse. From the outside, my life looked perfect. I was a marketing strategist in a downtown high-rise. I had the cool apartment, the nice car, the photos on social media that screamed success. I was playing the part of a man who had his life together. But I was living a lie, a very, very expensive lie. This isn't a story about how to get rich quick. This is the story of how I dug myself into a hole so deep I couldn't see the light, and the brutal, ugly, and ultimately beautiful journey of climbing back out. This is the story of how I bought back my own life. 5 years ago, I measured my worth by external signals. The approval of my boss, the brand of my watch, the number of likes on a photo from a fancy restaurant. I was a product of what they call lifestyle inflation. Every time I got a small raise, my expenses didn't just rise, they pole vaulted. It started subtly. I moved into an apartment I couldn't really afford because it was in the right neighborhood. It had floor-to-ceiling windows and a view that impressed everyone who came over. What I didn't tell them was that the rent consumed nearly 60% of my take-home pay. Then came the car. It wasn't a Ferrari, but it was a German sedan with a monthly payment that was more than most people's grocery budget. I told myself it was a smart purchase, an asset. It wasn't. It was a metal box designed to broadcast an image of success I hadn't actually earned. But the real poison was the plastic in my wallet. Credit cards became my secret enablers. They were the bridge between the life I was living and the life I could actually afford. And I used them to buy more than just things. I used them to manage my feelings. Had a terrible week at work? I'd buy a new expensive watch online. The momentary rush of the confirmed purchase click was like a drug. It made me feel in control. Felt insecure or left out at a social gathering? I'd be the guy to loudly announce, "This round's on me." The fleeting moment of being the generous, popular guy was worth the quiet dread I'd feel when the bill arrived. Feeling trapped and overwhelmed by my own life? I'd book a spontaneous vacation to somewhere sunny and exotic. I'd put it all on the card, telling myself, I'll figure it out later. Later was a magical, imaginary place where all my problems would solve themselves. I became an expert in active denial. I set all my credit card bills to auto-pay the minimum amount. That way, I never had to log in. I never had to look at the total. If I didn't see the number, it wasn't real. I'd get official-looking envelopes in the mail, and my heart would hammer against my ribs. I'd just toss them, unopened, into a drawer. That drawer became a graveyard of my financial reality. Out of sight, out of mind. But your body knows. Your body keeps the score. I developed chronic insomnia. I'd lie awake at 3 a.m., a cold sweat on my brow, with a vague but crushing sense of impending doom. I had constant tension headaches. My finances were making me physically sick, but I kept pushing through. I kept performing. The illusion was everything. And then one phone call shattered it all. It was my mom. My dad had had a minor accident. He was okay, but the car wasn't, and there was an unexpected bill for the repairs. It wasn't a life-shattering amount. It was about $1,000. And my mom asked if I could help. She said it with this tone of confidence, the pride of a parent asking their successful son for a small loan. And I just froze. $1,000. To the world, I was a man who could easily handle that. But in reality, I didn't have it. I didn't have $100 in savings. Every penny I had was already spoken for by my rent, my car, and the minimum payments on a mountain of debt I refused to acknowledge. I had to lie to my own mother. I made up some excuse about having my money tied up in an investment. The silence on her end of the line, it was deafening. It was the sound of her quiet disappointment. When I hung up, I felt a kind of shame so profound it made me feel nauseous.
Here I was with my fancy watch and my German car, and I couldn't help my own family with a simple $1,000 problem. That was the breaking point. The performance was over. I couldn't lie to myself anymore. That night, I decided to open the drawer. That night was my reckoning. I pulled out every unopened envelope. I logged into every single credit card account, every loan portal. For the first time, I forced myself to look. I opened a spreadsheet. Line by line, I entered the balances. The Visa card, $12,500. The MasterCard, $9,800. The store card I'd gotten for a discount on a TV, $4,200. The personal loan I'd taken out to consolidate other debts, which I had then maxed out again, $25,000. The car loan, on and on it went. Each number was like a punch to the gut, a monument to a stupid, impulsive decision. After an hour, every debt was listed. I scrolled to the bottom of the column, took a deep breath, and typed in the formula, equals sum. I hit enter, and there it was, $73,428.50. I stared at it. I think I stopped breathing. It wasn't just a number, it was a life sentence. At my current rate of minimum payments, with interest rates averaging around 20%, I would be in debt for the rest of my life. I would die with this number hanging over me. I broke down, not loud sobbing, but this quiet, hopeless weeping. I had traded my entire future for a lifestyle that wasn't even real. The next day, I started my real education. Not in marketing, but in survival. I spent the entire weekend glued to my computer, watching YouTube videos, reading blogs, learning everything I could about debt. That's when I discovered the two main philosophies, the debt snowball and the debt avalanche. The avalanche method is the most mathematically sound. You list your debts by interest rate from highest to lowest, and you attack the one with the highest interest rate first while making minimum payments on everything else. This saves you the most money over time. The snowball method, championed by Dave Ramsey, is about behavioral psychology. You list your debts by balance, from smallest to largest, and you throw every extra penny you have at the smallest one first. When it's paid off, you feel a huge psychological win. You then take the money you were paying on that debt and roll it over to the next smallest one. It creates momentum. It keeps you motivated. For me, the choice was obvious. I didn't have a math problem. I had a motivation problem. I needed wins. I needed to feel like I was making progress. I chose the snowball. But a plan is useless without ammunition. I needed to free up cash, and that meant my fake life had to be systematically dismantled. I called it my scorched earth budget. I had to burn everything to the ground to save myself. First, the car. That was my pride and joy. I spent a weekend cleaning and detailing it. I remembered the day I bought it, how successful it made me feel. Then I listed it for sale online. A week later, a guy came and handed me a cashier's check. I handed him the keys. Watching him drive away with my status symbol felt like a public execution of my ego. The next Monday morning, I was standing at a bus stop in the rain. It was humbling. It was exactly what I needed. Next, the apartment. My lease was up in 2 months. I gave my notice. I found a small studio apartment in a much older building, miles away from the trendy neighborhood. It had a kitchen the size of a closet and a view of a brick wall. The day I moved, sitting on the floor surrounded by boxes, I felt like a complete failure. But for the first time in years, my housing cost was something I could actually afford. Then came the social life. This was the hardest part. I had to learn the most powerful 2-letter word in the English language, no. Hey Leo, want to grab dinner Friday? Sorry, man, I can't. I'm on a strict budget. We're all going to Vegas for Mark's bachelor party. That sounds amazing, but I'm gonna have to sit this one out. Have a blast. Some friends understood. Others drifted away. I learned who my real friends were, and I spent a lot of nights alone. It was lonely, but it was also the first time I was being truly honest with myself and everyone else. Finally, I got a second job. After my 9 to 5 as a marketing strategist, I delivered pizzas 3 nights a week. The exhaustion was bone deep. I'd be sitting in my beat-up secondhand car at 11 p.m., the smell of pepperoni filling the air, and not think about my colleagues who were probably out at some fancy bar. The shame was immense. But then I'd look at the cash I'd made in tips, and I knew. This cash wasn't for a watch or for a fancy dinner. This cash was buying my freedom. I want to be clear. This was not a smooth, inspiring montage. It was a brutal grind. And I failed. I had relapses. About 6 months in, I was feeling so deprived and miserable. I walked past the store and saw this beautiful leather jacket, and the old voice in my head started whispering, "You deserve this. You've been working so hard. Just one thing won't hurt." I walked into the store. I held the jacket. I could feel my resolve crumbling. But then I thought about that phone call with my mom. I thought about the feeling of that number on the spreadsheet. I put the jacket back on the rack and walked out of the store, my heart pounding. It was a bigger victory than any sale I'd ever closed at my day job. The first real win came 8 months into the journey. I paid off my first debt, that stupid store credit card with a $4,200 balance. The moment I made the final payment and the screen flashed, "Balance $0," I actually shouted out loud in my tiny apartment. That small victory felt monumental. It was proof that the plan was working, proof that I could do this. With the money I was now saving from that payment, I rolled it into the next debt. The snowball was starting to move. The next year was a blur of work, budgeting, and paying off debt. After 18 months, I crossed the $50,000 threshold. It felt like breaking the surface of the water after being held under for too long. And something strange happened during that time. My mindset started to shift. I had removed all the external things I thought made me happy: the car, the apartment, the dinners out. And I discovered that I was okay. In fact, I was more than okay. I started finding joy in free things. I rediscovered my love for reading from the library. I learned how to cook amazing meals for a fraction of the cost of eating out. My relationship with my partner, who supported me through all of this, became deeper because it was no longer based on expensive dates, but on actual connection. I started hiking on weekends instead of going to brunch. I was building a life that was rich in experience, not in expenses. I realized the golden cage I had built for myself wasn't just made of debt, it was made of insecurity. And by tearing it down, I was forced to find a foundation of self-worth that wasn't tied to what I owned. The final payment happened on a Tuesday afternoon, 3 years and 4 months after I first typed that number into a spreadsheet. The final debt was a chunk of that big personal loan. The payment was for $1,212. I logged into my bank account. I set up the transfer. I hovered my mouse over the confirm button for a long time. I thought about everything: the rainy bus stops, the late night pizza deliveries, the lonely nights, the small victories. I clicked the button. And then silence. There were no fireworks, no angelic choir. There was just this profound, deep, quiet peace. The weight in my chest, the weight I had been carrying for almost a decade, It was gone. I walked out of my apartment and just sat on a park bench for an hour, breathing. I was free. It's been 2 years since I became debt-free. I never moved back to a fancy apartment. I still drive a simple used car that I paid for in cash. My life looks much less successful on social media than it used to, but it's real. It's mine. That $73,428.50 was the most expensive mistake I ever made, but it was also the most valuable education I ever received. It taught me the difference between net worth and self-worth. It taught me that the things that truly make us rich, peace of mind, strong relationships, freedom of choice, can't be bought. The ultimate goal of financial freedom isn't to own a yacht. It's the freedom to not have your decisions dictated by debt. It's the freedom to take a lower-paying job that you love. It's the freedom to be able to help your parents without a second thought. It's the freedom from that 3 a.m. panic. If you are watching this and you are in that dark place where I was, buried in a debt you think you'll never escape, please hear me. You are not your mistakes. That number does not define you. Your second draft, your comeback story, is waiting to be written. It will be hard. It will be ugly. It will require sacrifices you can't even imagine yet. But on the other side of that struggle is not just a zero balance. It's you, the real you. And that is a version of yourself worth fighting for.